Hello guys and gals, me Mutahara, and PlayStation did the right thing. Good job, buddy. I don't have to knock that G Fuel tower over. Now, a while back, I made a video titled PlayStation Keeps Making Mistakes. I actually pushed that tower over the edge. Now, as you all know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a game preservationist, okay? I love game. The older I get, the more generations I've lived through in video gaming, the more I realize I constantly go back to older games. People are like, why would you play a game from 1999? I don't know. Why was I playing Final Fantasy VIII on the good old PlayStation 1 just like an hour ago? People go back to older games, especially timeless, classic games. Now, ladies and gentlemen, PlayStation 4, in my opinion, is an amazing gaming system. If I had to rate it, if I had to tier list PlayStation systems, this would be under PlayStation 1, which I consider basically to be the god of PlayStation, okay? Like, that's peak PlayStation. PS2, not far behind this. I have had good times with the PS4 generation. Tons of awesome PlayStation games, tons of awesome exclusives and console exclusives, whatever you want to call it. Just good all-around gaming on this bad boy. Now, basically, why this system had an issue was that it had something called a C-bomb. And before anybody gets into it, no, it wasn't a cum bomb. This was, in fact, a good old term for when the actual CMOS battery in these things tends to die. Now, to understand, a CMOS battery exists in almost all forms of electronics you have, your motherboards, your consoles, whatever. It basically gives a tiny amount of power to the system, and that's basically to keep certain memory alive in the actual motherboards, and to keep certain features that typically would disable if no power was ever provided to the system. That's basically why CMOS batteries exist. In the PlayStation's case, it provided two actual functionalities. Number one being, it allowed the PlayStation to know when to unlock a digital game. So for instance, here's a good example. Let's say the moment you buy this thing and connect it to the internet or PlayStation servers, PlayStation would use the internet to tell the PlayStation, this is the time, no matter what. Now, you know you can go to the date and time settings and change certain times around, right? I'm sure some of you have tried to pre-order a game from PlayStation Network like God of War, and you've probably tried to change the date past the release to understand, hey, maybe I can play the game early. You can't. That's called buying the digital deluxe edition. They allow you to play the game like 3 days earlier and get spoilers online, but hey, I digress. Ladies and gentlemen, what actually happens is the PlayStation has two sets of times, right? Whatever you set and the kernel time. Now, I want you to imagine PlayStation knows that, let's just say a flat number is used as kernel time, right? So it knows that God of War unlocks at second 750,000, just a coarse example. Now, your PlayStation, no matter what you're doing a few days before, is going to be stuck at second 300,000, or whatever, around, back and forth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, until your PlayStation's kernel time, which can't be modified unless you're starting to use custom firmware and things like that, will not launch God of War until 750,000 hits on the kernel time. That's what it's there for. Now, it also is there to verify the time for trophies, so, you know, nobody can go in and say they unlocked, like, every game's trophy at, like, the year 1979. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. It's designed to truly exactly pin down the second you've unlocked a trophy. Now, to realize, the biggest issue here is that we don't care so much about trophies. It's a small price to pay to not verify our trophies. I understand PlayStation needing to protect digital licenses, but what was happening was PlayStation 4, and by extension PlayStation 3, the moment the CMOS batteries were dying, which no matter what, they will. Those things are ticking time bombs. They will always die at a certain point. Now, the moment they died and you didn't have an internet connection, you couldn't really run your physical games. You couldn't even run your digital games. So guess what? All the physical media you bought, which by the way, 99% of those physical discs can be played without any patches, front to back. And at the end of the day, if you lose that, well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It's not the best console for preserving. See, I'm one of those people where it's like, if I have functional hardware, it should just run the game. You know, I bought a Super Nintendo years ago, decades ago. It should work out of the box, no matter what, as long as it's functioning. And the same should apply to these systems as well. Now, to get this, ladies and gentlemen, okay, what effectively could happen was you could replace the CMOS battery, which is something that we had to do for this video. So it's not really difficult to get rid of the CMOS on this thing. I basically could just open this thing up and remove the little CMOS watch battery, and you can buy them for a couple bucks on the internet. Replacing them isn't really the issue. The problem is when PlayStation turns off the servers, which eventually they will, verifying this kernel time will become an issue. So what that effectively means is at some point PlayStation 4s are all going to die and stop reading games, which is terrible. It's anti-consumerist, if you will. They released this new patch and it fixed the C-bomb. They fixed it, dude. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, I myself can confirm opening this thing up, taking the CMOS battery off, killing the kernel time, putting it back in, and not connecting the PlayStation to the internet allows me to run my disc games, whereas previously you absolutely couldn't. Now, in some cases, users like Desk Games YT actually showcases that while they can unlock trophies, because the kernel time isn't verified, it can't verify the date of the trophy. It's a very inconsequential price to pay to be able to run those games in the first place. Look, we're not getting to any form of emulation in a bit of a time. Okay, I know I showed you that PS4 emulator video, not the fake one, the real one, and it's going to be a while before that matures. But until then, you can actually preserve your PlayStation system. Look, I take good care of these things, and that allows me to run PT and Bloodborne until eventually they'll be emulatable. So ladies and gentlemen, this is actually really good news. Now, personally, do I think Sony did this out of the kindness of their heart? Fuck no. It's Sony, guys. It's another multi-billion-dollar company. Do you think Microsoft does things because they care about gamers? No! They just care about you being part of the Microsoft ecosystem. They could give a fuck about you. Same thing with Sony. That's why I don't simp for companies. That's why I think the console war is stupid. They're multi-billion-dollar companies, guys. They're not your best friends. They're not going to sleep with you. In other big countries, right to repair, consumer rights, making sure that companies don't do this kind of shit is actually held to a pretty high legal authority. So I have to imagine Sony did this to prevent any form of legal action taking place. Because you have to understand, we're only noticing this issue now because CMOSs are dying. People have tried the same trick with the PlayStation 5 by taking its CMOS battery out, and thankfully the issue is not replicated on the PlayStation 5, which means that Sony probably thought about it when they were designing the security architecture and the software for the PlayStation 5. What I saw in the PS4 and the PS3, I'm sure me and several other engineers can agree, basically happened as sort of an afterthought. Nobody engineered it like this. So honestly, it really did seem like an issue from the start, and we honestly just hoped Sony would fix it. And the reality is, Sony, I think, legally would have had to fix it, and I don't think it would have cost them that much to even fix such an issue. So they ended up patching up their PlayStation systems and basically avoiding the actual eventual heat death of the PlayStation systems. Now, luckily, because of how the PS4 is designed, you can update your system without ever even connecting to Sony servers. You can just download their firmware, stick it on a flash drive, and update your PlayStation that way. Now, I don't really have anything else to add into this entire situation, but the fact that this whole, headache was avoided, and, positivity where positivity is due. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, companies can make a million mistakes, but when they do something right, you gotta give them credit where credit is due. At least in this case, PlayStation does solidify itself as an offline-friendly system. And that's important, because when your systems are mostly connected online, I'm looking at you, Xbox, and you need a connection to the server to sign on and start using your system, otherwise it's just a useless brick, this is a good alternative. It means that no matter what, you don't need Sony servers to actually run games on this. You can just buy a PlayStation, buy a game from the store, and run it without ever having to connect to the internet. And I think there's value in that. There's also something I really forgot to mention in certain cases is, I know that if you have a PlayStation 5, the backwards compatibility becomes sort of a non-issue, and why would you even have a PlayStation 4 in this case? Now, the way that PlayStation 5 does backwards compatibility is really great, but in certain cases it does tend to fail. I'll give you a great example. If you buy Assassin's Creed Origins and run the 1.0 version on a PlayStation 5 right now, it has issues, alright? At least for me, the game crashes as soon as you start the game and actually get into the world. Now, if you're on an original PlayStation 4, it runs without any problems. So something in the emulation, or however PlayStation 5 does backwards compatibility, can break certain games. So at least having an original piece of hardware tends to help in those cases. Ladies and gentlemen, there's also value in the fact that emulation becomes a bit more easier in that case too. But ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. This is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.